Listen up, Gotham.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Hi, Buttons, it's me, Harley Quinn.
This is Batman.
This is Robin.
Tune into the Bat Fanatic podcast.
The Bat Fan Addict Podcast.
The Bat Fanatic Podcast.
The Bat Fanatic Podcast with Sammy Warmhands.
With Sammy Warmhands.
The Bat Fan Addict Podcast. Bat Fan Addict Podcast.
Although, Sam, you might think about changing the name.
Hey everybody, it's the Dark Knight of Rap, Sammy Warmhands, and this is the Bat Fanatic Podcast, or the Superman Fanatic Podcast. Who knows, because we're diving back into the Christopher Reeve world. As always, I'll be joined by my co-hosts, Gramps and Dunk. But first, we've got to shout out our friend and sponsor, the Nando Knight from TNK Comics and Collectibles. You can follow on Shortbox for a look at his slabs for sale at shortbox.com/TNK Comics, or on Instagram for claim sales and convention appearances at the Nando Knight. That's KNIGHT. Now, today, as I mentioned, we are going back into the Man of Steel, the OG series that kicked off this genre that we know and love today. This is Richard Lester's Superman 2. Play us a song, Gramps.
I'm not a jukebox.
That's the name of my first album.
People do this song. Play me a song. What do you know?
I was just trying to encourage the bit. Okay, now you're going to get our video taken down. Can't play that. Oh, he's sneaking the social media shot.
Gotta do it for the gram.
I wasn't ready.
Hey, I appreciate the free promo.
Why not?
Well, we are back into film with Superman 2, 1980, directed by Richard Lester, written by Mario Puzo with David and Leslie Newman. Starring, of course, Christopher Reeve, a top-billed Gene Hackman, as if Brando didn't do enough. Knock Reeve down a peg. Ned Beatty, Margot Kidder, Terrence Stamp, of course, as General Zod, and so many more. Music composed this time by Ken Thorne, though it leans heavily, of course, on the John Williams score. Now, this film was shot concurrently with Superman, it's 1978, and was 75% complete when Dick Donner was fired by the producers in the studio, replaced then with Richard Lester. And in order to meet the DGA requirement for a director's credit, he had to reshoot the vast majority of the film.
Over 50%.
I think it's even higher than that.
Yeah.
For example, Joss-tice League from 2017, which is credited to Zack Snyder, even though it's only about 25% his footage. I think the standard is increasingly higher in order to meet the threshold. So just curious, what was your first impression here? Have you guys seen the sequel before?
Well, yeah, I'd watched this back when I was 45 years old.
Right.
1980.
Makes sense.
Still living with my parents, you know. So was Captain Gravity. This time he didn't jump off the roof. He learned his lesson.
What's impressive to me is that he aged like 35 years between these two films. That's crazy.
Well, I can't explain physics to you. But yeah, I had watched the movie, and I mean, as a kid, you love it with no question, you know?
Absolutely.
That's all we had. I mean, these were like
Yeah.
the beginning of the superhero film genre.
Yeah, it was this and Adam West. That's it.
Adam West, you know, they made that 66 Batman movie. Of course, I hadn't seen that one yet. But yeah, I mean, this was all we had. So yeah.
Because that came out when you were in your 30s.
I was being all groovy.
Dave, were you a fan of this movie growing up?
Yeah, it's funny because like I haven't watched it since I was 4 or 5. I watched like it was like new all over again to me. So I was like, wait a minute.
That's cool.
I don't remember that. I'm like, is this the one where he freezes the lake? I was like waiting for that scene.
It's funny because it's not as good of a movie, and yet I think in many ways Zod is a more iconic villain than Gene Hackman's excellent Lex Luthor.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was predominantly just world building.
Yeah.
And it set up the sequel so well, and now we're really getting into okay, he's already established as Superman. Now we're getting into some super villains.
And what's crazy is I was reading that Donner had envisioned this MCU like story that could be up to 10 different films or something like that. Talk about ahead of its time, but clearly Warner Brothers being who they are, not just with Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon, but with Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher. Of course, we have the Batgirl movie. Of course, we have the interference in the Flash movie. It's just what they do. And so all the way back to the late 70s and early 80s, here is, I think, probably the best early example of the studio interference that changes everything.
Everything over and over again.
They can't help themselves.
Sometimes when lightning strikes and they have this massive hit on their hands, they don't know how to follow up, or they're just so guarded that they're worried, are the kids going to like it? We got to make it so kid friendly that we got to have them coming back and sell some toys, sell some merchandise, and just water it down.
And I get that Batman Returns had parent backlash, and I get that BVS had a certain backlash, right? I still think those are terrible decisions. But in this case, you have a first of its kind, undisputable hit. And the sequel is 75% done already. Why the fuck are you that at odds with this guy who just fucking teed it up to have a perfect repeat of that success? And you're like, yeah, I just fucking, let's throw the whole thing away, bring back the whole cast and crew, except for the crew that didn't come back because fuck you. But like, I just don't get it, man.
Now, when you first put it out on the table to watch this film, we originally were going to watch the Donner cut.
Yes, and I'd like to watch that in the future when you guys can get your hands on it.
On YouTube, you can buy or rent it.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Just look up, Superman 2 Donner cut. And I found several clips that showed the film version versus his scenes.
Yeah.
There were a lot of extensions of the current footage, also some big differences. And also, I don't know the time frame between the reshoots, but even just some physical changes with Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
It's like he bulked up.
Well, if you think about if they were shot at the same time, then this would have been 77.
Right.
And probably reshoots are 79, 80,
How old was he in the original film when he shot that? Like 24, 25?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
We'll get into more of a comparison, I guess, when we get around to the Donner cut. But for now, let's dive into the story here. It opens with Zod and his henchmen breaking into the Fortress of Solitude. And there's inexplicably one guard in a white hazmat Cobra commander-looking suit that is quickly subdued. And Zod takes a red crystal out and snaps it in half. The lights go out and we flash back to his sentencing from the first film, though Brando's dialogue was completely replaced by another actor, and we see them float away into the Phantom Zone.
I like how we now get to see the backstory of why they were sent to the Phantom Zone. And it's almost like Zod gets the last laugh because, look what happens to Krypton. They did him a favor.
They saved him.
Sure.
They sent him off and they blew up.
Yeah. And the opening credits are interspersed with clips from the first film, providing the most insanely thorough recap for anyone who missed it. And you got to keep in mind the era. This is before the home video boom of the 80s, right? This is pretty early on. And so I'm sure a lot of people hadn't seen Superman since 2 years earlier in the cinema. It's probably necessary of its time. When you watch it now, it's a little gratuitous. This tactic, I think, was repeated by Sam Raimi in Spider-Man 2 or possibly 3, where they worked with Alex Ross to actually recreate scenes from the earlier films and kind of give you the recap.
I enjoyed the recap. I was like, wow, that's pretty pleasant. We don't see that anymore.
I was like, we don't even need to watch the first movie. It's all right here, the whole thing.
It's like 5 minutes worth.
Actually, it's worse because with the quick little repeat scene and then the extended credit sequence, 9 minutes later, we finally get some new footage.
Now, it did kind of remind me. Have you ever picked up a comic?
No.
No. Okay. Well, there's these books.
I'm new to this medium.
I don't pick up comics.
Books that are pictures with some words and they tell stories. They're called comics. Some of the ones that I read, especially like Daredevil, because I read other characters besides Batman. I read other books besides Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, we've discovered you have this whole secret alias, apparently.
I'm a Gemini, so I do DC and Marvel. I'm one of those guys.
And you're into astrology.
You're into the astrology. Whoa.
Yeah. So
I'm really getting to know you now,
have
Gramps.
one-page recaps. Or if you've ever read a Batman book,
I'm listening.
they always have to include that crime alley death of Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Ben Polanski's favorite part.
Right. They always got to include that in some form or fashion. So in a way, it's kind of staying true to those comic books.
Right.
You should check them out sometime. They're pretty cool.
I think I will. Yeah. Perhaps for our next episode.
Good.
Now, kicking off the actual new footage here, at the Daily Planet, Clark wanders around unnoticed, and Perry asks him to investigate a terrorist attack at the Eiffel Tower. He says that Lois is already there on the scene, so of course, Clark runs off and does the Superman quick change, flying off out of sight.
Just in the middle of the street, as he's running in front of everyone, he's just like...
Well, he kind of does it in the alleyway.
He goes
yeah.
That was a really cool scene. I like that.
Yeah, the way like
it was
his,
a cool
his
effect.
clothes just like disintegrated and it just went right into like the suit.
It's kind of like that shot when he jumps, I think, off the roof or out of a window or something in the first one. He just changes on his way down somehow.
And for its time, I mean, I'm sure that was like super awesome special effects.
Oh, yeah. They probably spent 3 weeks on that shot.
And I mean, honestly, I think that part was part of the reshoot because that whole Eiffel Tower sequence, I don't think was in the Donner film.
I haven't seen it in a minute, but I don't think it's there at all. Yeah.
Because in Donner's version, and maybe I'm skipping ahead, but Superman, as part of the original movie, takes that missile. That missile went out into space and caused the explosion that frees Zod.
Right.
Now continue.
Fine. So here in Paris, Lois is apparently a dumbass now. She chimes in at a press briefing, a hydrogen bomb? Well, that could blow up all of Paris. And then she pretends to need help, asking a cop to read this translation book with her French to English. And with his back turned, looking at the book, she runs into the Eiffel Tower and winds up hiding beneath the floor of the elevator that the terrorists are on.
I read something where a lot of that Eiffel Tower, her showing up, was shot in like almost.
By the way,
downpour.
Don't Google Lois Lane Eiffel Tower. You might come up with something entirely different.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a no.
Doing it right now.
Incognito browser.
But it was raining very hard during the shooting of that scene, which if you look very closely, there is some water on the cars, and some of the cars have their windshield wiping, but you don't see the rain in the shot. And
Weird.
That cop, you see the water dropping on his shirt. And that was something where post-production, they took it in and kind of smoothed it out to make it look like it was just kind of an overcast day.
Weird. I'll have to rewatch that.
The ground is
scene.
pretty wet. You're right.
The ground is wet, yeah, but
There's a car with the raw drops.
You got it up there on the screen now?
Yeah.
Nice.
Good cat. Wow. That's interesting.
yeah.
So yeah, she runs up into the Eiffel Tower. She's like hiding underneath the floor of the elevator. And as it climbs higher, she's trying to calm herself by repeating Nobel Prize, Nobel, like spelling it out. It's almost, I don't know, a little cartoonish, I feel like.
I just want to, what was her plan?
I don't know. She wanted to listen in until they explode. I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a plan at all. It was like, oh my God, they're going over there. I got to get close to them.
Interview them to death? I don't,
She had to do everything possible to get the story. That's all that matters.
Yeah. So the terrorists release the hostages and begin prepping the bomb. They cut the elevator cable, and the bomb is loaded inside, so it's plummeting towards the ground with Lois screaming attached to the bottom of it. And, of course, Superman flies in just in time to save her. And once Lois is safe on the ground, he flies that elevator through the top of the shaft, out the tower, and up into space. And when the bomb explodes, we see the Phantom Zone is affected, and that is how Zod escapes.
Right.
Back in New York, Lois and Clark, which, by the way, felt like this scene would have some kind of an ending. We're just immediately back in the streets of Metropolis. And Lois and Clark see each other in front of the Daily Planet building. And Clark is somehow hit by a car, decimates the whole front of it, and she doesn't notice beyond saying, like, you should really look both ways. Well, not everyone can have X-ray vision, Lois, and just like...
None of that made any sense.
The driver of the cab was like, what the fuck, man? You ruined my shit. And like, nobody turns around
cares.
To notice. Yeah.
You know how people in New York are.
No one cares. Like,
they don't care. They don't care.
Yeah, no one cares he destroyed his car.
Have you seen recent videos in New York City? It's like, nope, keep it moving.
All right, so in her office, Lois talks about how to be healthy while smoking a cigarette and slicing half a dozen oranges with a juicer on her desk. My note here is, what is happening? This is bizarre.
Back then, like, cigarettes wasn't bad yet, right? It's like,
I mean, I guess
everyone was smoking everywhere. And
cigarettes aside, because she smoked in the first one, you really shouldn't smoke, Miss Lane. I get that. But the whole, like, she's got a fucking juicer on her desk, and it's just like everything about her character so far is weird to me.
All over the place.
This is obviously a rewrite because who was the second director? What was his name? Lester?
Richard Lester.
I read where he injected a lot of the comedic moments to kind of make the movie more lighthearted.
Yeah, he's the original Joss Whedon in this circumstance.
Yeah, he made him dumber, tried to make him funnier.
And for some reason, there's like 6 references to orange juice now. Freshly squeezed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He takes the juicer from her to try to help her, and he smashes his thumb, but it doesn't smash, right?
He smashes the machine pretty much. Not really.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it's like a Clark Kent dumb thing to do, but...
it's there, but not really.
But it would give him away if she noticed. I don't know. It's like you're Clark Kent in this version is dumb on purpose, and that's a dumb on accident thing, which happens again later in the room when he trips. But we'll get to that. Lex Luthor and Otis are introduced in the prison laundry room, discussing some gizmo that tracks alpha waves and can lead them to Superman. Next, we're at NASA, and they're monitoring astronauts and cosmonauts on the moon. The astronauts are soon confronted by the Kryptonians, Ursa and Zod. They're understandably baffled by these people who walk around unaffected by the atmosphere and are unceremoniously thrown screaming into space. Zod posits that the atmosphere must be the source of their new powers and concludes that they shall go to planet Houston to rule. This is kind of a cool sequence when she rips the badge off of the guy's spacesuit and he's, obviously suffocating in front of her. And she's like, ooh, what primitive armor you wear or some shit like that.
Yeah, and she keeps the badge.
Yeah. And then I think Non comes up and like throws the whole fucking spaceship or something. He like totally smashes it.
Didn't realize we tried to go back to the moon.
In collaboration with our Russian allies in the 80s. Yeah. Back at prison, because we're cutting back and forth a lot here, a guard checks the cells at Lights Out and finds that Lex and Otis are merely a hologram. This is a very Batman 66 moment when he stands in front of the projector, looks at it on his own shirt, still doesn't figure it out, and then sees it on the wall again.
Yeah.
And in the courtyard, they circumvent the cartoonishly inept guards, and Miss Tessmacher drops a ladder from a hot air balloon. When Otis tries to climb it, the balloon loses altitude, so they cut him loose, and he gets caught. There seems to be no attention paid to them as they float off in the sky, as if the latter was some serendipitous discovery.
And that hot air balloon was super fast. Must have had turbo engines or something. They don't even get a shot off.
It doesn't even look like they look up. They're just like, oh, we got you with your ladder in the middle of the yard. I'm like, what? Where do you think that fucking came from? How is he going to use it? I don't know.
So many questions.
At Niagara Falls, Lois and Clark pose as a newlywed couple to expose a honeymoon scam. Clark seems to think it's a noble assignment, young people getting taken advantage of. But Lois complains that she'll never get an award doing stories like this. Outside, they join the other tourists and take photos of the waterfall. Lois makes a second comment about his eyesight and offers to clean his glasses. She's had her suspicions about Clark in the first film, but this is the first real breadcrumb that's being planted because she's got his glasses in her hand. He's feeling exposed. That's his disguise. Like, oh shit, got to get him back on.
The best disguise in all of comic history.
And it's so iconic that they could never change it.
Glasses.
No matter how many reboots.
Yeah. Sam, take your glasses off. I knew it.
All this time.
When Clark walks off to get some food for Lois, a dipshit kid is playing on the wrong side of the rail and falls into the waterfall.
The parenting during these scenes.
Dude, I rewound that shot and showed it to my wife. I'm like, look at this. So the kid's switching hands on the rail on the wrong side. Look, Mom. And she's like, turned completely around like, that's very nice, honey.
Yeah. I was like, what? But even the kid before that was on the railing. It was like,
yeah. Did
no one else hear that kid getting yelled at to get off the railing? And then it's like the very next scene, here's this kid on the opposite side, like, yeah, look at me.
So as the resident New Yorker on the podcast, have you been there? Because I imagine there's got to be like 6 foot fucking fences now, right?
I haven't been. I'm about like a 3.5 hour drive, and I haven't been, but I'll get there eventually. Once they have a con there.
This is the thing I've learned about New Yorkers. They don't do anything. They don't go anywhere of any sightseeing within their own city or state.
Well, no, I don't do that either. I've toured all over the country over and over again, and people are like, oh man, you ever go to the Space Needle? I'm like, no, I've played Seattle like 50 times. I've never gone to the Space Needle or, any of those things. I've driven past the road you would take to go to the Grand Canyon. Never been. I get it.
I'll do it with other people. Like if someone's like, hey, let's go to the Statue of Liberty or something. Okay. I'm like, all right, let's make a day out of it. But
yeah,
no.
So this idiot kid falls into Niagara Falls, and Clark hears the scream, changes out of sight, flies in, saves the boy before he hits the water. And this idiot kid is so stoked that he just got saved by Superman. He learned absolutely nothing from this experience. Like, oh, I almost killed myself. He's like, no, do it again.
Yeah. It would have been funny if he tried to do the same thing again, and then it's like, I can't do anything, son. You're dead now.
Lois waves to Superman as he flies away and gets ignored. She's very suspicious that Superman happens to be in Niagara Falls, and yet Clark wasn't there again. When confronted, he evades the question, saying, darn, I forgot your orange juice. Which, hot dog and orange juice, I don't know if that's a great combo.
She's just trying to be healthy.
Yeah. Got to make up for those cigarettes.
Oh, yeah.
Luther and Tessmacher, which I assume are just body doubles here, are ice sledding through the Arctic and find the Fortress of Solitude. Luther is in awe of the architecture and stumbles upon the crystals that contain Krypton's history lessons. And Brando is again conspicuously absent. A random Kryptonian guy, maybe you guys can identify him, I don't know, gives the first lesson, followed by Cal's mother.
I read where they purposely did not include Brando because of contract. They'd have to pay him again.
Was that the same actor who played his mom in the first one? Because she was barely in it. I don't think she even had.
I believe it was. I mean,
Speaking
obviously
one.
with the hologram or whatever, they kind of aged her a little bit. But yes, I think that was the same actress.
She warns that the Phantom Zone could be cracked by an explosion in space, and that these Kryptonians would be just as powerful as Superman. Now, aside from informing Lex Luthor of this, I feel like this whole scene is
Rushed.
it's just unnecessary. Like, there's so many things in the writing of this movie where the dialogue is just so convenient that it's like, oh, by the way, the Phantom Zone can be exploded in space, and these 3 people we've captured could come here and be just as strong as you. Like, fucking, come on.
And oh, that's going to happen.
We're going to see that in a few minutes anyway. Do you need to? I don't know. Like, I think it's significant that Luthor found the fortress. I think that's all we need to know.
You understand now, watching it, who the target audience was for, because
Right.
you know, they make things so obvious. They spell out the danger that's coming.
They're like, hey, you remember that record cover in space that exploded? Well,
On
it
the dark
released-
side of the moon,
it released these villains.
right.
What was the Queen album? It was it Queen 2 or whatever, where it's their faces on the black cover? That's what it looks like to me.
It made me wonder, watching it now, what the BVS Lex Luthor would have done if he had discovered the Fortress of Solitude.
Oh, yeah. That could have been interesting.
Ooh.
He would have totally weaponized it. He would have taken all the information.
Oh, yeah.
He would have
Which
had
was
he would have
kind of what he was
execute.
trying to do with, the Kryptonian chamber already.
Yeah. This Lex Luthor, he just kind of went there, saw it, got the t-shirt, and left.
Yeah, he's sort of like, okay, I know where to find him now. Oh, villains are coming?
Obviously, it gave him the thought, I need to be on their side because
Yeah.
they can help me. I can.
And there's 3 of them.
Yeah. I hope they show up during my lifetime.
Right.
Back at Niagara Falls, Lois continues to push Clark on the Superman subject. She says that she's so sure that she's willing to bet her life. She says, if I'm right, then you'll turn into Superman. If I'm wrong, you'll have one hell of a story. And she throws herself over the rail into the water and gets her ass kicked by the rapids. Clark helplessly chases from the shore and yells things like, swim, swim, Lois, before discreetly blasting a tree with his heat vision, and she rides the branch to shore. And he climbs down to help her out of the water, comically falling into the water himself, and she then has to save him. Lois is humbled by this experiment and likely won't try it again.
I actually think that was one of the better scenes in the movie because it just kind of...
That's pretty funny.
He's like, I really got to put a stop to this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's weird because he always goes out of his way to no matter what save her. And he's just like, well, she probably won't die,
It's funnier that she didn't get mad about that later on.
You're right. That should have come back. That should have come back later.
Like, wait, you are Superman?
Because it does not take long before she does figure it out. And yeah, at that moment, she should have been, you could have fucking saved me the whole time. Yeah. You made me save you in the fucking...
You're right. That's exactly what...
That would have been hysterical.
Zod's crew lands on Earth, and we see a fisherman that nearly shits himself when Zod walks on water. Ursa gets bit by a snake and burns it to a crisp, and she marvels at the novelty of it, but Zod shrugs it off like, yes, you have powers, we all have them, and when Non tries his own heat vision, he doesn't get very far.
It's almost like, do you remember that old school Toho Godzilla movie where like baby Godzilla is trying to spit fire for the first time? That's what I kept thinking of. I was like, oh, because he pretty much has the mind of a baby.
Yeah, I don't also understand why that dude is mute or like what his whole deal is.
That's funny you mentioned that because I read an article by the actor who portrays him.
Yeah, I read that too after you sent it.
He actually had a pitch for an additional movie that had Zod, Non, and Ursa in it. And in his story, Non actually was a scientist on Krypton that had a lobotomy, and that's why he can't speak.
Weird.
Yeah, he actually used to be like a smart dude, but something happened with him.
Dude, you know what's crazy? I was just skimming the cast to get his correct last name, and there's a cast member named Michael Shannon. How fucking weird is that? One of the president's men. That's fucking funny. Okay. Back at their room in the hotel, Clark somehow stumbles into the fireplace, and Lois runs to his aid. Now, again, this is Superman himself tripping. Like, it's not a dumb Clark, I did this on purpose because I'm playing Clark. He fell into the fireplace. How the fuck? I don't know. But she runs to help him. His hand is unharmed, even though it went directly into the coals. And he has no choice but to reveal his true identity.
Around her, he's just a bumbling idiot.
Yeah.
Guess that's how we have to accept it.
Yeah. And it was so dramatic when he revealed himself. It was just like, took the 2 steps. You saw his broad ass shoulders. I'm like, damn, he's been hitting the gym, dude.
I feel like he has a different posture and everything when he's Clark.
You really can see how Christopher Reeve controlled his body between the 2 characters.
Yeah. Because he looks like Superman, even just dressed down.
Yeah, but he kind of hunches over and he pulls his shoulders in. But then in that one moment, I mean, it's like, boom.
I was like, yo, dude, you competing, son? Like, wow.
He just literally transforms, just by standing upright, and his jaw comes up. I mean, it was like,
glasses come off. And it's like, all right, damn, all right.
The dick comes out.
Confidence comes over him. Yeah, it's like, wow, okay.
I'm sorry, Lois.
And so she says, I'm in love with you. And he's like,
I know.
Let's go back to my place. And so he takes her, as we'll see, to the fortress. Now, some Houston County sheriffs find our Kryptonian friends blocking the road. I don't know why they're just standing there in a line across the road, but they find out the hard way that they are not to be fucked with. Zod blasts the cop's shotgun with his heat vision and then uses the force or some shit to telekinetically move it. I don't understand that part. And then accidentally shoots himself while examining it. And of course, is totally unharmed. But we're introducing some new powers in this film.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I mean, obviously, there's a big scene at the end where there's some just weird stuff going on.
There's some things.
Goes nuts.
They arrive at a small town nearby, and Non again tests his heat vision. Inside, some locals laugh at Zod and Ursa for their appearance, so she challenges one of them to an arm wrestling match. Apparently, they have that on Krypton. Sorry, Krypton. She slams him through the table, and when another patron comes over and says, girl or no girl, you're going to spit teeth, he gets thrown through a wall into the street. And outside, someone pulls a gun, and Zod uses the force again or whatever to levitate this guy and drop him 20 feet from the air.
Put down my dad. Poor choice of words, kid.
Right. Very poor choice of words. Meanwhile, Superman and Lois fly to the fortress, and then he goes globetrotting to get her dinner and flowers. We actually see him like in a tropical jungle or something, picking flowers, and then shows up back there. Like, hey, I got dinner.
He goes in, though. That one part, I have something to say.
He's like, it's my chance.
Can't wait.
I can't blow it. Zod finds a live news crew and realizes that he can reach millions of people at once. At the same time, the army rolls in and starts bombing them. Ursa laughs that they need machines to fly, and we see each of them flex their powers in different ways. When Zod turns back to the camera after this crazy scene of action and violence, he asks, is there no one on this planet to even challenge me? And the president watches in horror from the Oval Office and wonders aloud, where is Superman?
Getting some.
And we cut back to the fortress. He's having a nice little date with Lois Lane. Yes. I made a similar joke when I was watching it. And he was like, where is Superman? And I turned to my wife and I was like, probably getting his dick sucked right about now.
You made her watch it too?
she was reading a book while I was watching it, and so she was kind of half watching it and would comment on it.
My wife, she was like, "This looks stupid." I was like, okay, well, it's classic. So,
well, she bought it for me for Christmas. So
Nice.
But here, Zod threatens on TV that the president will answer to him, or he'll destroy every other city in his path.
She's going to end up just like this one, as they said.
Yes.
All right, so hold on. That whole fight scene, right? I had this thing about movies. You know, like there's always like that one person kicking everyone's ass. If I'm like dude number 8 ready to get my ass kicked, and I just saw dude 1 through 7 get destroyed, I'm not going to try anything. Like,
Yeah.
like you just went through 7 dudes. I'm gone. Like, I'm not going to get hurt. I'm done. That's it. My job here is done. Because number 9's going to think he could do something. Screw him.
You might be one of those guys where they kill one of their own soldiers because he ran off the field. You're like, fuck that. They're killing people over there.
Yeah. I have a better chance running away than trying to keep on fighting. Oh, man.
Back at the fortress, Superman is advised by his mother's hologram that living with a mortal requires him to become mortal himself. Again, I don't know where they're pulling this out of their ass.
Why?
How do they even know?
Somehow, his mom then walks out of the hologram and approaches with her physical body. What the fuck is happening?
Yo, technology beyond our comprehending.
There is a chamber, apparently, that emulates the atmosphere of Krypton's red sun, and Superman steps into it to sacrifice his powers. And this is the most comically terrible effect sequence I've ever seen in a major motion picture. It is amazing.
I even remember when I was a child watching this one. Why does he have to quit being Superman?
Yeah.
Who made these rules?
For me, it was like, dude, this is only the second movie. You getting rid of your powers already? That's the first comment.
Yeah.
You're quitting?
And it's a continuation of the first film, too. Like, come on.
You haven't done everything yet. You don't even know what else you could do. Like, relax. But my comment is, I just finished watching an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Boyle falls in love, and like everything happens real quick. And he's like, I don't know. When I'm with her, I just lose myself. And he's like, oh, hey, honey, how you been? Are you ready for our first date? And I got to know where he's like, oh my God, I love you. Let's get married. That's exactly what I felt when they were in the Fortress of Solitude. I was just like, yo, you guys got to slow down. Like, slow down. Like, losing your powers, dude?
Yeah.
Well,
First date going straight to marriage.
Yeah.
We're going to bump uglies and my powers are going to be gone.
Obviously, Lois survived the relations with Superman. It's not like he just plowed her and
The Mallrats discussion.
It's impossible. Lois could never have Superman's baby. Do you think her fallopian tubes could handle his sperm? I guarantee he blows a load like a shotgun right through her back.
Yeah, he was soft.
maybe that was the point. Is like, you know, if you want to continue this, you got to weaken yourself up a little bit.
Put that super dick away.
You're going to kill her.
Put that hammer away, homie.
Now, Lois asks him, you did all that for me? I don't even know what to say. And Clark says, just say you love me. And this scene is kind of baffling because not only the oddly convenient exposition from his mom, like I mentioned, but Lois has no romantic interest in Clark Kent whatsoever. She is in love with Superman.
She's in love with this guy that can fly her in her underwear around the world.
And yet his decision is, oh, she finally knows who I am for real. Why would no longer being Superman ensure any kind of devotion or love from her? This is totally lost to me. I don't understand why. Yeah. Oh man, she finally knows that I'm this guy that she loves.
I could be myself.
I'm going to no longer be that guy that she loves.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Oh, you know, I could be myself or whatever. And then he's like, let me get rid of the most important thing about me.
Yeah. And then you're still going to have to pretend to be the dingus. So like, what do you... Yeah, there's nothing about this that makes sense to me.
So was this part in the Donner cut?
It's a bit of a blur in my head as to what is what. And so we'll get into more of a comparison when we watch the second one. Zod's team defaces Mount Rushmore and invades the White House. And I just want to point out, they would have had to go really far out of their way to start in Houston, fly by Mount Rushmore,
Just to
and
go to the
arrive
Dakotas?
in Washington, D.C.
Like,
How
why
did
would
they
you,
even know about Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, why would you go there? Sorry.
I don't know.
It's like-
And they fly by it as if they're just like graffiti tagging a
Yeah.
wall or something, like it's some on the way no, it's so far out of the way.
It was like your face, your face, your face. Oh, we don't need a fourth one. Blow. Now we're going to the White House. And I'm like, okay,
I don't know, man.
whatever.
Zod demands that the president kneel in his presence, and the president concedes, which there's a whole thing with there's a duplicate and whatever, but the president eventually concedes with a warning. I'll kneel before you if it will save lives, but there is one man here who will not. And I like Zod's response. Who is this imbecile? Now powerless, Clark takes Lois to eat at a shitty little diner for some reason.
How'd they get back, first of all?
I don't know, man.
Yeah. Like, yo, who drove? Who flew?
Can't fly
like,
anymore.
Like,
yeah.
what happened? Like, who bought their car to the fortress?
How
Well,
far
they clearly
is this,
didn't because they fucking flew there in the first place.
I mean, is this fortress just in like Toronto?
Did it teleport?
I don't know, man.
Did he grab like a gem or one of those things? And he was like, all right, boom. All right, we're going to go to this diner now. And it's like, here we here. How?
So
Howdy.
this is what I was trying to remember. There's a scene later where he's like, hitchhiking back to the fucking fortress. But right here, I'm trying to remember when young Clark Kent trekked out there in the middle of nowhere and he hucked the kryptonite and it created the fortress. I'm trying to remember how he got there. Did he fly there? Did he climb, walk, ride, hitch?
I think we assumed he knew of his powers and probably flew.
So they don't explicitly show it. We just kind of, okay. That's probably why I couldn't remember.
Just like a lot of other things. They just
Or
don't
ran
show it.
because he knew he was super fast and could run.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Clark takes Lois to eat at a shitty little diner, and he gets into a little altercation.
With
And
rock.
he's never experienced pain before or been bested by someone in combat, but the guy punches him out, and Clark freaks out at the sight of his own blood. And I want to point out it's just from a busted lip, but he's never seen his own blood before.
This is my favorite scene in the whole movie. Even as a kid, I love this.
Yes, I can't deny this is an iconic scene. And he jokes, maybe I should hire a bodyguard. And Lois says, I don't want a bodyguard. I want the man I fell in love with. No fucking shit, man. That's what
You
I
should have
was
said
just
something
saying.
to begin with, lady. She watched him drain his powers.
That's true, but also he didn't consult her on any of this, So as far as she
Communication.
knows, maybe he can just switch it back and forth. I don't fucking know. I don't know.
I blame his mom.
You guys are just misogynists. I gotta say, you're
Yeah,
both blaming the
sure.
women for the man's actions.
I blamed him first, remember? Boyle.
It's true. It's true.
He's just like Boyle from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
So Clark does not back down and gets his ass kicked a second time by this guy before Lois jumps on his back and he leaves. The waitress at the diner does this, like, nothing to see here, folks. Let's turn on the TV. On live TV, the president relinquishes his power, which I don't know why he says he has authority over the world, but he does,
Right.
to Zod, before screaming for Superman's help at the very end, before the camera cuts off. And Clark says he has to do something and returns to the fortress. We see him holding a shard of kryptonite, which is kind of great because, when else do you get to see Clark Kent holding kryptonite?
Well, if he gives up his powers, is he
Yeah.
no longer susceptible to...
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure he wouldn't be.
He's fine with that.
In the Oval, Lex Luthor introduces himself as the greatest criminal mind of our planet, but Ursa is not having it. Like, oh, what a pathetic fucking planet then, Luthor informs him that Superman is the son of Jor-El, and I'm the only one who knows where to find him. Luthor's pretty much useless in this movie.
He's a weasel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's just kind of trying to con his way back into, like, hey, I'm not the big shot anymore, but hey, you know what?
You don't want to kill me, though.
Well, because he also knows that they're susceptible to kryptonite.
That's true. Oh, man, that would have been such a great triple cross
That would have
at
been
the
great.
end, man.
Exactly.
Fuck. You guys are coming up with all the better ideas here. Let Bat Fanatic rewrite your films, guys.
40 years later.
In 4K.
The Gramps cut.
Well, that could mean something else. But anyway.
So at the planet, Lois and Perry and Jimmy wonder why Superman hasn't intervened. And just then, Non trashes the whole place and raises Perry's head through the ceiling. Luthor has led them to Lois, which inevitably will lead to Superman. Why doesn't he start with the fortress? I'm not sure. But Zod is irritated. You promised me the son of Jor-El, and threatens to kill Luthor on the spot. But Superman appears outside the window to defuse the situation, ironically saving Lex in the process. And the Kryptonians follow Superman out the window. When they begin to fight, a crowd forms in the street below. For some reason, one of these shots is backwards. I don't know if you noticed this, but there are numerous signs, like construction sign and then big like wheat paste ads on the wall on the side of the building behind them.
Oh.
Superman has restored his powers, but having not been exposed to the sun, he's clearly not at full strength. We see him wince at the sight of an explosion after he uses his heat vision, and then Non is able to knock him out of the sky.
You remember when Man of Steel came out and there were all these complaints from people saying, cities are destroyed in this movie. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, did you not see Superman 2?
Listeners cannot see it, but I've been enthusiastically nodding my head the whole time you've been talking. That was exactly what I was thinking.
I mean, they go to town.
And not just that, but there's like hundreds of people.
There's hundreds of people. And I have to assume there are deaths because that one point where they take the bus and slam it up against Superman, there's people in the bus.
Oh, yeah, it's packed full.
It's packed full. People are going to die when a Kryptonian throws a bus and slams it into another solid surface.
Yes.
That whole argument back in the day I thought was really stupid, and stuff happens when Kryptonians fight in Metropolis.
Yeah, and I can't wait till we get to Man of Steel because, boy, do I have some thoughts about that too. I love that one. I really do. This scene, speaking of some of the practical effects here, it at times looks primitive through modern eyes, you know, the wire work and they're fighting in the sky and stuff, but it's pretty impressive for its time. They do some crazy things, like when the top of the skyscraper falls on the crowd, Superman swoops in to stop it and not only puts it back on the top of the building, but like jams it down and traps Non's body underneath the thing. Like they do some cool stuff, or like the bus you mentioned.
Oh, wait, you're right. That whole scene you said is completely reversed.
You see it?
Yeah, everything's reversed. The first scene, you can see everything one way, and then everything's just reflecting backwards the other way. It's supposed to be no entry, but it says on.
Yeah,
maybe it's an after effect of him flying around backwards and reversing things. I mean,
I gotta take a picture.
Now everything is backwards.
Which, if he were smart, he would have just flown around the world backwards again, and then Zod and them never would have showed up.
Did it the first movie, right? Why don't you do it the second one? Come on.
Do I have to spell it out?
Well, that's something we'll discuss in the Donner cut, because
there's more.
Spoiler alert, while they were nearly completing the second film, they had to stop
hammer time
and do post-production on the first movie to get it released. So Donner is not satisfied with the conclusion. And so he took the ending from Superman 2 and put it in the first movie. So the whole spin around the world thing, you're going to see that again, because that's what they had planned to end the second film. And then he got fired, so he wasn't able to fully develop a new ending.
Oh,
yeah.
Gotcha. Wow.
Anyway, so Zod seems disgusted, saying that Superman's weakness is he actually cares for these people. And Zod turns his wrath toward the innocent bystanders. And just before he blows up a tanker truck, Superman rips off the truck's mirror and reflects the heat ray back at him. Then, of course, he blows to freeze the truck and cool it down again so it doesn't explode. I like this little shot, too. Kind of like the bus thing. Non flies downward into Superman, knocking him into the pavement underground. And instead of another awesome scene in the Earth's core, we get some earthquake shots in the street and the people running, and they duke it out off camera. We don't even see what happens. Back in the street, they all keep throwing each other into things around the city, and this is where I noted, wasn't that a major complaint of Man of Steel? That's not what Superman would do, you know? And we see the product placement getting destroyed, the big Marlboro truck and the neon Coca-Cola sign in Times Square, all that. When Ursa and Non throw the bus full of people, he doesn't exactly catch it, but it stops before crashing into the building. And when Superman does not reappear, the onlookers declare him dead and form a mob to try to beat up Zod with whatever objects they can find in the street. This is where Dave was like, I'm not in that mob.
Yeah.
Bad
I
idea.
would have been like, you idiot.
Motherfucker,
Dave would
just
be
beat
like,
up Superman.
2 hot
I'm
dogs,
out.
please. Everything on it. I'll take a Pepsi. See ya.
This is a good effects shot and a good comedic beat. I genuinely love this whole sequence where the Kryptonians see the crowd coming and they simply just blow on them. And everyone goes flying. And the scene lasts for quite a while. We see toupees knocked off, umbrellas inverted, cars go flying, a man roller skating backwards, which is so funny to me. Yeah. And the best part is this one guy who continues making a call as the payphone booth that he's in is destroyed all around him. And we cut back to him numerous times through this, and I fucking love it. I think it's so funny.
God, I gotta find it.
That's a reshoot.
That's like a Norm Macdonald, like, what? No, it must be on your end, you know, all the fucking wind and screaming on his side of the phone. Superman finally reemerges from under the bus, but apparently retreats. He just flies away, and Zod calls him a coward. All the bystanders look around like, what the fuck just happened? He just left us here.
Like, bro, we were fighting for you, dude. What the hell? Why you left us?
Yeah, really? We had your back. Zod returns to Perry's office for some reason and declares his victory there. But Luthor is unimpressed. What do you mean? You didn't even get him, you know? And Zod threatens to kill him once more for talking back, but of course, Luthor fires back with, quote, Superman's address. Lex and Lois have to comically fly on the backs of Ursa and Non, and this is ridiculous. I almost wish we hadn't seen it, but it's also genuinely funny.
Well, they couldn't make this scene today. I mean, especially with the way Lex Luthor is on the back of Ursa. With like,
it's funny. I thought it was funny having him on her back, because Zod would like, never. No, I'm your ruler. I will not be burdened with these people, you know. At the fortress, Zod calls it a sentimental replica of a planet long since vanished, which is interesting because, you know, like Michael Shannon's Zod, for example, is very interested in preserving their culture and their history. And this Zod is more just like, what a sad little fucking cosplay of what our world once was, you know. Superman, this is weird, apparently peels the logo off of his chest.
I don't know what that is.
And then he throws it.
What just happened?
At Non. It's like a shrinky dink, like cellophane window decal fucking thing that wraps him up, knocks him down, and then disappears.
Yeah, even Lois was like,
everyone in the room looks kind of confused by it. Like, I don't know what that was. And then he just gets up.
It's kind of like his Batcave where he's got all his weapons and arsenal at his disposal.
He's on some Home Alone shit. He's like, oh, we're here now, guys.
Like, yeah, I'm going to run back home, and if they show up, I'll be ready.
Like, he fell from
But he also
trap.
has no inclination that any of them know where he lives. So, like, what was he going there to do? Are you going to bait them to a place they don't know exists? I don't know. Anyway, when they start fighting, all 4 Kryptonians are somehow disappearing, reappearing,
Yeah,
Superman is then projecting clones of himself all over the room.
Teleportation trick.
Was this ever a thing? I'm no comic historian. Was this some weird golden age thing they pulled out of their asses, or did they just make it up?
I'm just as confused. Yeah.
Listen, all I got to say is this. In part 1, he went back in time. You can move fairly quickly if you could go back in time. So I'm going to say that.
But he's in 4 places at once. Because he's in front of each
fast,
one of them.
man.
And
He's
next to Lois.
Superman.
Okay. All right.
You can't touch this.
With Lois in their grasp, Superman then backs down. Zod, of course, betrays Luthor yet again, and then he pleads with Superman. He tells Luthor, convince them to go into this chamber and it'll take away their powers. Luthor instantly tells them the secret, and they force Superman to go inside himself. When activated, the whole room goes red, and he makes a pained expression on his face. When he comes out, Superman finally kneels before Zod. But when he takes Zod's hand, he crushes all the bones in his fingers, throws him across the room and into a cavernous void below. Non tries to fly and falls right after him. Ursa is knocked out by Lois herself, and she too falls into the abyss.
So I think you just answered why Superman went back to his fortress. He wanted to lure them there.
Yeah, he rewired everything.
I know that he wanted to do that, but again, how would he lure them to a place that they don't know exists?
Because he was listening to Lex Luthor. Super hearing. While he's flying away. Or maybe he just flew off out of sight, came back around and was like...
That's interesting headcanon, but there's nothing on screen that shows Luthor left a trace at the fortress or that he picked up on any cue that Luthor knew where it was.
No, they show you 80%. You got to fill in the other 20.
I'm going to say, back to my going back in time theory. This happened already, and then he went back in time. We didn't see that scene.
That's got to be it. So according to the article that Gramps was talking about, there's a deleted scene that doesn't appear in either version of the film where the Kryptonians are jailed. And in this, they're presumed dead when they just fall down the hole.
Right.
Legit.
And again,
Killed
we
them.
saw the fortress created, by the way, which I don't know why they would fall infinitely down somewhere and die, because it was kind of built on this snow. I don't know.
That was part of the, I guess, controversy about this movie because it turned Superman into a killer.
Right, which is also the Man of Steel complaint.
And it also turned Lois Lane into a killer because their powers were gone. So they fall down into this cavern in Toronto.
And she's just as bad because she sees those two die and then is like, oh, I'm going to kill this bitch.
I've been wanting to do this my whole life.
I guess they fall to their death or somewhere and freeze to death. They're never seen again.
Yeah.
But like you said, this article talks about how there was actually an extra scene that you can see them lead away the 3 Kryptonians, I guess, to prison or jail.
They take them to Arctic Circle for hamburgers. There's an 80s reference for you. And Superman now says, I knew you'd double-cross me, Luthor, who again pleads for mercy as the scene fades out. In the first one, we see, Superman drops him off straight in prison. Here, it just kind of zooms out of the fortress, and it's just implied that Luthor goes away. Back at the planet, Lois mourns the loss of their relationship, likening it to marrying a doctor who gets called away in the middle of the night. She's jealous of the whole world, she says, and it tears her up to have to hide their true selves from everyone around them. Clark doesn't know what to say, to which she replies, just say that you love me. Clark takes off his glasses and gives her a long kiss. Afterward, she appears to faint for a moment and has no memory of anything that's happened between them.
And they cue that swirly music that... Yes.
And she immediately sends him away for a burger At 9 a.m., Lois? And then asks a coworker, what's happening in the world? Like she has total amnesia. And then we cut back to the dickhead at the diner. He's like, can I get another plate of this garbage? And Clark appears. And this is like Brick from Anchorman, where he's like, where did you get those clothes? At the toilet store? Clark says, that's funny. I've never seen garbage eat garbage before. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man.
That was so cringy.
The guy punches Clark and probably shatters his hands, kind of like when Nicholson punches Batman in the bell tower. Clark spins him on a bar stool like a cartoon and throws him down the bar, which also like clears everyone else's plates, by the way.
What a dick move.
Yeah, and then he pays the damages before leaving because he's still a good person. In one final scene, Superman flies back to the White House with the American flag and puts it back on the roof. He apologizes to the president and says, I won't let you down again. The end.
What a movie, guys.
What a movie. Highs and lows, man. Highs and lows. Yeah, we talked about some of these crazy fucking powers. How about the Men in Black amnesia kiss?
Yeah, where did that come from?
I mean, you'd forget your life too if Superman kissed you, wouldn't you?
Yes. Maybe for the first time, I would perhaps question my sexuality for a moment, particularly the Henry Cavill version. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, who can argue that is a man right there? Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
That's a good-looking guy.
I said that about someone else earlier. Oh, man. I'm like, that's a dude. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I had no idea. Look at me now.
My wife is obsessed with Henry Cavill, so, you know, I had to
Same
come
here.
up.
Same here.
Yeah.
What do you do?
As a kid, a lot of awesome scenes.
Yeah.
As an adult, I have so many questions. And again, if I was dude number 8, I was gone. If I was dude in the roller skates, did you not see all this stuff going on, buddy? Like,
wait, didn't they? I feel like they did that on one of the Jackass movies. Cause you know, like the intro, they always do like a big Hollywood budget, like intro. Yeah. I swear to God, they did something like that.
I think you're right.
It's like Pontius on roller skates or something, man. I got to look that up. Did you find any Easter eggs that we didn't talk about? I know this seems to draw a lot on fucking whatever Richard Lester had in his brain and not so much on comic books, but
not much really popped.
Yeah.
I think I was just too busy trying to figure out
why
things are happening.
Dave, you got any pros you want to talk about?
The Superman movie. That's a pro.
And hey, no origin story. It's a sequel, right?
Yeah.
Minus the 9-minute intro, I guess. Never mind.
I really don't have many pros. Great scenes for the time period. Okay. Yeah. You know, even the flying scenes, you know, they're pretty entertaining to watch. Where it's just like,
yeah,
I'm going this way. All right, going that way. It was entertaining. I had to put myself in the position as someone who's watching it as like when I was a kid. And the first time I watched it as young Dave, right? Young Dunk.
Yeah, we can't judge this in like the way you judge a Christopher Nolan modern.
Yeah, 100%. As a child, I'm like, wow, these scenes were rocking, man.
Yeah.
You have people shooting laser beams. You're at the White House. For whatever reason, you're at Mount Rushmore. You're in space. In Paris. There was
covers a lot of ground.
You're everywhere in this movie. And that's exactly what the movie was. As an adult, the movie was everywhere. But
yeah,
as the young me really enjoyed it. The adult me was happy for the kid me.
I remember when we read Superman Batman on this show from Jeff Loeb, we were all like, what the fuck is like so much shit happens in each issue and we're on to the next thing. And it's like so many characters, so many things happening. You know, this is kind of one of those where it's just like, let's jam as much shit as we could possibly think of into this movie.
See what happens.
And who cares if it goes together or not?
That, and it's like, you know, what you said earlier, it's an earlier movie. It's a superhero movie, which you didn't have many back then. So it's like, just have fun with it. And I'm sure it was kind of like the comics. Yeah, it felt like a comic.
I think that what we can't do, like I said, is judge it by modern standards.
100%.
But what we can do is judge it by the bar that was set with the first film, because I think we all had a strong reaction positively. I do keep that in mind when we talk about these things.
Same.
Gramps, did you have any pros you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I loved watching Clark Kent get his ass kicked.
the diner scene.
I love that scene so much when Rocky the trucker just puts him in his place and makes him realize, you know what, that was a poor decision.
I also love the way that they kind of wink at that in Man of Steel. The trucker guy. Yeah, exactly. I love that. Yeah.
Even from a young age, I was like, he didn't train to fight. He was always just the strong Kryptonian that just stood in the way of bullets. He never tried to do anything, and he faced off against a real man and found out what it's like. I have always just loved that scene.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
So yeah, that was a positive. I mean, I always liked Zod.
Yes.
Zod was originally created, I think, during the Silver Age comics, which here's where I was curious, because in Man of Steel, is it Feora?
Yeah.
She's actually in the comics as well, but in this movie, it's Ursa. So I was always kind of curious why they changed the name. It's essentially the same character.
Yeah, they sort of play the same role.
In the comics, Feora is the actual name.
By the way, guys, if you are listening to this and you are a Superman reader, drop a comment or shoot me a DM on Instagram at BatFanAddict if you have Superman books that you think are really outstanding, because I recently read Superman Unchained. I really enjoyed that. I want to read like Superman for all seasons, certain things that I've come across, but I don't have much Superman in my library aside from the Superman Batman stuff. So, if you're real knowledgeable about that, let me know what you think is the best stuff that I should have.
Same here.
I won't tell him.
Who?
You.
Oh.
Who's the retard? You.
Yeah, if they give me the good stuff, I'm hoarding it. I won't share.
I want to learn too.
I just want the listeners to know that I don't pretend to be like this Superman guru. I haven't read much Superman besides, like you said, when he's been part of Justice League books or Batman Superman titles.
Same.
To me, he's always been kind of a boring comic character.
I'm a simple man. When I see Batman, I buy it. But otherwise, I stick to the movies.
But again, this was like the beginning of the superhero movie genre.
Yeah.
When you're watching this as a kid, I mean, your eyes are just wide open. And like Dave said, you're seeing all this incredible action, and you've got these super villains that are stronger than Batman or Superman kicking his ass. And you're like, how is he going to get out of this? Oh, instead of using his strength, he's actually going to use his brains.
I bet there were a lot of kids who watched this tape a lot more than the first tape, because the pacing of this movie is just rapid fire. Shit's happening all the time. And the first one does have a pretty slow first 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, and he's not fighting a super bad guy. I mean, he even outsmarts Lex Luthor, in the very end. So that was really cool to see.
Also not flying around the world.
Yeah.
So many things.
Yeah, there's a lot more happening for a young audience.
Yeah. And it was kind of like going back to all these powers. You also have to realize this is a time when Star Wars was coming out, and they've got Jedi and all this stuff. So it was kind of like, hey, we like these Jedi. Let's put some of this crazy stuff in our movie.
Can you imagine Empire Strikes Back comes out 1980, and you're like, fuck yeah, the sequel's even better. Oh my God. And then Superman 2 comes out, and you're like, what the fuck? Is this guy using the Force?
Exactly. That's what they were doing. They were like, lasers, teleportation, mind control. He just did a mind trick on Lois with the kiss, man.
Yeah, man. Jedi mind trick.
Totally. All
right, so before we move on real quick, my pros, I would echo your sentiments about Zod. I think Zod is iconic. I love his performance. I really don't have any issues with his portrayal off the top of my head. Just enjoyed every scene that he's in pretty much. Lois was all over the place. You could tell there was multiple writers on this film. But what I do like is her constant suspicion of Clark. You know, everyone's like, oh, really? The glass is going to fool you, you know. And we talk about his posture, his body language, his voice, all the various things that he does. You know, it's still obvious, but like within this film, in this context, and we have our suspension of disbelief, I like that she is still not just curious, but like persistent. And she's willing to go to extreme lengths, just like she is for her Nobel Prize or whatever, or for Pulitzer or whatever it is. Man, maybe it is a Pulitzer, and I said the wrong one earlier. But anyway, I love that she's willing to throw herself into the river and die because she believes that strongly. So even though her character's all over the place, I do like some of those things.
I was just thinking of that scene because I was like, the way you said it, the fact that she trusted that she's going to be saved.
Biggest violation of trust.
Chill your roll. Like, just can you just do a trust fall instead?
Right.
Not
She
like,
did.
Yeah,
She did.
Yeah, she tried to commit suicide, but like a trust fall. It was like, oh, you're so strong.
What do we got for cons, guys? There's some problems.
Just the lack of consistency. Storyline was a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like rushed, like from one scene to the other. Lack of explanation or just like backstory of like certain things that was happening. I'm gonna just keep it at that because there's so much more.
I'm just going to say it. Really bad writing.
Yes. Yeah.
Really bad writing. Because you have the bones of a good movie here, and it's just bad writing that weighs it down. And tonally, it's much sillier than the original. Like Gramps said, like, it's for kids. Who cares? You know, and I think there was a little bit of that where there wasn't the same sort of reverence that Mario Puzo and Dick Donner brought to the original film.
Yeah, there's a lot of comedy shoehorning.
I mean, give me my backwards roller skate guy, but like some of it is just.
I had to watch that over and over again while we were recording. That is hysterical. Because the one thing, you can't stop. He's like flying back. Everyone else is like pretending they're falling, and he's like, meow.
You know what? It's so 80s. It's awesome.
And he's all like, oh, like, yeah, that's so 80s. Like, you're just scared. You can't do anything. Throw yourself on the floor, buddy.
It's one of those shots. I didn't rewind it or anything, but I was almost like, did they film that normally and play it backwards or something? Like, how did they blow this motherfucker backwards?
Well, and also, anytime it's windy, they got to add the trope with the toupee. I think it was the guy proposing.
Yes.
He was down on his knee and his hair flew off.
Yes.
The crazy thing is there's cars in the air.
Yes.
Everyone's on the ground. I'm like, wait a minute. If there's cars flying in the air, roller skate guy should have been like 15 feet up in the air, scared about where the hell am I going to land. Not that I'm rolling backwards, but
one of my favorite. This is random, but Ron White had a great joke.
It isn't that the wind is blowing; it's what the wind is blowing. If you get hit with a Volvo, it doesn't really matter how many sit-ups you did that morning.
You end up just like the fight scene in the diner.
Yes. Moving on then to the rating.
I can't rate it as like watching a modern day movie, right? Because it's completely different. But I can rate it according to both of me, younger Dave and current Dave. And the first movie just does such a great job with the storytelling and keeping like an even pace.
And it has heart too, you know?
Yeah, there's like a storyline. You understand everyone. Like there's like scenes with people that you only see like once, you never see them again. But they were like key, they were like, you knew who they were in the first movie. You're going to see
Jonathan Kent, man, so powerful. His death scene and fucking like Lois buried alive. Like,
got saved.
We got none of that.
And then there was no scene like that besides Roller Skate Dude. Hope he's all right.
R.I.P.
I hope he's listening. I hope he's like somewhere. This guy's like, that was me.
We're gonna find out about this guy 40 years later. Like Carl Newman was like, "Yo, I was Batman."
I gotta look him.
He's like,
up.
I was Roller Skate Guy.
Roller Skate Guy. It was funny in some scenes. A lot of scenes were just questionable. Like you guys both mentioned, Zog was the best thing in this movie.
Scene stealer.
Yeah, he dominated every scene.
It's almost bizarre to me that he wasn't really in the first movie, because he was in the intro, and I forever associate him with the Christopher Reeve character, but it's all in this movie.
Yeah. So overall, I don't think kid me would have enjoyed this one as much as the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm give it a lenient, I guess, a very conservative score of a 2.5.
Okay. Gramps, do you also have a long-winded excuse before you deliver the death blow of your rating?
5.
Out of 10.
Oh, the sarcastic 5. I love it.
Well, I mean,
we're talking about the movie, not just Zod.
As a kid, this one delivered the cool action sequences. Even as stupid as they were, you were like, whoa, what? This one is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It gets the big thrills and it gets the twists, the upside down where you're left breathless and sometimes scratching your head. But at the end of the day, it was like, well, it's a superhero action fiction movie and I would watch it again.
Yeah.
As goofy as it was, it's almost like one of those movies where you're like, I got to watch this again, man. That was a trip.
I like it more than like a Batman Forever, where it like tries to be really serious and then gets really dumb, and then tries to be really serious and then gets really dumb.
Yeah.
It's different from the original, but it's at least more even that like, yeah, this one's just a little goofier.
With what I do for a living, it's a release for me to turn my brain off and just to go in there and just see stuff that would never happen in real life. I just want to see crazy shit. And this is what this delivers.
It does. It delivers crazy shit.
Is it perfect? No, but who cares? You get to see Kryptonians beat the crap out of each other. You get to see a trucker beat the shit out of Superman. I love it.
That's right. That's why it's getting a 5, because Superman got beat up.
I mean, exactly. My rating on the first one, I told you I gave it that rating because I like this movie better.
Makes sense.
I gave it a 4.
Really?
Yeah. Because I would watch it again,
Just to watch that scene, just to get his ass beat again.
Well, hey, you know what? True story. And I sent you guys that article because the guy that plays Non, again, what was his name? Jack O'Halloran. Him and Christopher Reeve got into it during the filming.
That was some weird shit. Like he was the son of a mobster, and Chris Reeve said some shit about it, and he got in his face about it.
Yeah, supposedly the story is, they filmed this in London at Pinewood, right? And because they filmed the first 2 movies together, this was his first major movie as the lead actor and stuff. And he said he was just kind of a young kid, and he went to a restaurant of a friend of this guy's, and he overheard him saying some stuff about Jack's father, who was known to be like a mob hitman. And it got back to Jack. According to his interview stories, told Christopher, hey, we need to talk, and took him in private to like a trailer or somewhere. They had a discussion and seemed to make it cool. But then once they got out on set, his version is that Christopher Reeve kind of turned into the macho Superman, I'm the lead actor here, and said, you can't talk to me like that. And he shoved him up against the wall and about beat his ass. But the director, Donner, had to step in and say, hey, don't hit him in the face.
Yeah, not the face. Which the whole thing is very interesting because not just backstage drama or whatever, but everything we've seen from Christopher Reeve is not that boastful arrogance.
It's not just one time he said this. He's told this story multiple times, but there was always kind of that air of, okay, this is kind of a he said, she said type of thing. But the event did happen.
Yeah, I'm not saying it didn't.
Yeah.
It's just odd. And a lot of people have a public persona and a totally different personality in real life. So it's surely possible. It's just surprising to hear that detail of the story, that they had a face-to-face and then he walked out on set and was like, fuck you, I'm Superman. Like that just...
At the Cassie's hands. For real this time.
He made him look like the diner, man. He just right in the stomach.
Well, what I wonder is if that interaction between them two kind of made some of the fight sequences that much better. Like, were they able to take some of that into the acting role?
We also don't know at what point that happened. You know, maybe they had already filmed those, maybe not, you know.
Who knows?
Well, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It's funny, as I watch movies multiple times, you know, I have my IMDb and my Letterboxd. I like to rate movies. I find it interesting. The saved rating I had in there was a 7 and a 3.5. Watching it again, and I'm breaking down the story, and I'm like, I think that's generous. I think that's a little generous, because it's something I enjoy, but it has more than a few problems. As I said to my wife, I can give a movie like there's a good 3 and a bad 3. You know, there's a good 3 where it's like,
you earned that 3.
No, like I just watched something a day or two ago. It's pretty solid. I enjoyed it all the way through, but there wasn't anything remarkable about it, right? And then a bad 3 to me, or a bad 3.5, you know, would be something like the first Suicide Squad, where there's shit in this movie I fucking love, and there's shit in this movie I fucking hate. And so it's kind of somewhere in the middle.
I get that, because there's times with like certain franchises that I really want to love this movie. I really do, because I really love the character. I really love the actors, but my God, it falls short.
It's not good. Yeah.
I get that. I understand that.
So I say all that to say this one kind of gets a bad 3 because I really want to like it.
Yeah.
And there are fun things in it, but in terms of how often I watch it compared to the others, this movie is the one I've watched the least.
I get it. It's probably the one I've watched most, actually.
Because you love that scene.
I love that scene. I love Zod. And
see, it's crazy though if you watch this the most and haven't seen the other version. I'm very interested in talking about the director's cut with you guys.
I can't wait. I'm pumped. I need that scene. I'm still waiting for him to freeze the damn lake and carry that damn thing. Like, that's my scene. That's the scene that's been stuck to me and embroidered in my mind since I was a kid. So I can't wait to get to that movie and then be like, oh, this is it. And it's probably not going to be as epic as it was when I was younger, but
just watch it on YouTube.
Hey, am I waiting for this one scene? 5.
There you go.
I think that happens in Superman 3.
Can't wait.
Well, like Polanski said, you know, I think it was with Batman Forever. He's like, just watch the Kissed by a Rose music video, and it's 5 minutes, but it's better than the whole movie. It's just everything. It's all the stuff you liked condensed down. Kind of like the beginning of this movie. The opening credits condenses the 2-hour origin film to the 9-minute recap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Worth it.
It's almost like Superman 78 was kind of a love letter homage to the Golden Era comics. And then this is like the Silver Age, where everything was just anything goes.
And I, like I said, am no comic historian by any means. So like the oldest book that I own, I think, is like Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson, Swamp Thing. I don't think I have anything else even from the 70s, let alone before that.
Yeah, I mean, like when Superman and Batman were first created, their enemies were gangsters, mobsters, blah, blah, blah. And then there was this shift where it was like, we're going to fight some Martians and giant people.
Oh, right.
All this weird stuff. So that's kind of how I look at these two films, you know.
That makes sense.
And also I kind of look at it back to the Star Wars analogy. They had to compete against Star Wars. So they're like, we're going to make this shit crazy. Let's get some lasers. Let's get some force in here.
It's kind of like fucking Justice League, where it's like, man, we really want more of that Avengers Marvel tone for our Justice League. Let's just get the guy who did that, you know? Let's just get that guy and tell him to do that.
Right.
Same thing over and over again.
There you go.
And DC still doesn't understand.
All right, that is our show. Thank you guys so much for listening, and shout out to our overlords at DC and Warner Brothers. You know we love you guys. You just make it so hard sometimes, all right? We'll always check it out. We'll always be bought in, but we're going to give you an honest review. If you like our show, please give us a like, give us a 5-star on your app, and share to social media. If you're listening on YouTube for some reason, what are you doing? There's no video here. There's no picture. We only do video episodes for Comic-Con reviews. So join us on the podcast apps. That's the place to be. Now, as we've been doing this season, we're going to do 2 more comic episodes before we return to Superman. Keep mixing it up. But we are going to, for the first time, dive into Barbara Gordon's story in Batgirl of Burnside.